hostel has available 170 rooms. When the rent charge is 2,100 Ghana cedis, all rooms will be rented out. However, there will be 4 unoccupied rooms for every 40 Ghana cedis increase in the rent charge. So this means that when the rent charge is being increased by 40 Ghana cedis, that means there will be 4 unoccupied rooms. If the cost of running the hostel has a fixed cost of 100,000 and a variable cost of 880 per unoccupied room, so it means that for every room that will be occupied, it means that 880 variable costs will be incurred. So the requirement is that A, what is the rent charge that will maximize Bani Hostel's profit? B, what will be the number of rooms that should be made available for rent? So we have to look at what rent that when Bani Hostel charges, they will maximize profit. And we have to also look at the number of rooms that they should make available for them to get that maximum profit that they are looking for. So let's look at the solution. So first of all, when you get a question like this, you have to write down all the things that you need from the question in case you are solving it. Some you can go straight away and provide your solution, but to make it easy, let's first of all you have to write down the number of rooms. So the number of rooms is 170. The rent charge is 2,100. The number of unoccupied rooms is 4. The rent to be increased, the rent that will be increased the rent that will be increased is 40 Ghana cedis, and we have a fixed cost of 100,000, a variable cost of 880 per occupied room. So first of all, I have to go. So our first step is to define the demand function. So we define the demand function. So we define the demand function, we have to know our quantity and we know our price. So our quantity will be the 170 minus 4k, and the k here is the number of times the number of increase. K is the number of increase, so the number of times that the rent is going to be increased, so that is k. And so our quantity is for 170 minus 4k, and our price is going to be 2,100 plus 40k. So the year, as I said earlier, k is the number of increase. So if price is going to increase by 10, that means our quantity is also going to reduce by that number of times. Do you get it? Yeah, so after defining your demand function, the next thing that you have to do is that you have to now find your revenue function. We have to now find your revenue function. And we know revenue is equal to price times quantity. Here, our price is 2,100 plus 40k, and our quantity is what? 170 minus 4k. So we have to multiply them. So revenue is equal to price times quantity. So now you multiply 2,100 plus 40k all times 170 minus 4k. So now after multiplying that, you put the price in bracket, you put the quantity also in bracket. So when you are multiplying, so that means 2,100 will now go and multiply once the bracket of 170 minus 4k, and then the 40k will also go and multiply the same bracket of 170 minus 4k. So we now have 2,100 bracket open 170 minus 4k plus 40k to bracket 170 minus 4k. So you now expand your bracket. Okay, so 2,100 times 170 will give me 357,000 minus 2,100 times 4 will give me 8,400k plus the 40k times 170 will now give me 6,800k minus the 40k times 4k, which will give me 160k to the power 2. So after grouping items and solving this equation, your final revenue function should be 357,000 minus 1,600k minus 160 k square. So after you have been able to identify your or get your revenue function, the next thing that you have to do is your cost function. So in getting your cost function, we know that cost is equal to fixed cost plus variable cost. And here our fixed cost is 100,000 plus 880 Q. Here our Q is the quantity, which is the 170 minus 4K. So we now fix the 170 minus 4K in wherever wherever we see Q. So we now have 100,000 plus 880 bracket open 170 minus 4K. So you can now expand the 880 into bracket 170 minus 4K. So in expanding this, we'll now get 100,000 plus 149,600 minus 3,520K. So when you solve this, you now get 249,600 minus 3,520K. So you now get this as your cost function. So after getting your cost function, the next thing that you have to do is that you have to now calculate for our profit function. So it is the profit function that will help us get our rent charge and the number of rooms that should be made available. So in getting your profit, you know that profit is equal to revenue minus cost. Profit is equal to revenue minus cost. So now we know our revenue to be 357,000 minus 1,600K minus 160K square. Okay, then we know our cost to be 249,600 minus 3,520K. Okay, so now subtract it. So we subtract 3,500, we subtract 357,000 minus 1,600K minus 160K square. Okay, all into bracket minus 249,600 minus 3,520K. So now subtract our cost from the revenue. So when you subtract that and you group items, when you subtract that, you now get 357,000 minus 249,600 minus 1,600K plus 3,520K minus 160K square. So group items. So when you group items, you will now get your final profit function to be 107,600 plus 1,920K minus 160K square. So after getting this, we now the point at which our profit is maximum. So what we have to do is that we have to find the point at which our profit is maximum. And the rule is that the point at which your profit is maximum is that when you differentiate that profit function, it should equate to 0. You now get 1,920 minus 320K. So then we can equate to 0. But someone will be asking, how are we going to get this function here after differentiating? You know that when you are differentiating, when you are doing differentiation, so let's assume here is what? K. Let's assume here is what? So this is the same as what? 1,000 K to the power 0. I know that any number to the power 0 is the same as 1. Okay. Plus 1,000 to K minus 160K square. Okay. So in this case, the 0 here will now come and multiply this 107,600. So 0 times 107,600 is what? 0. K to the power 0 minus 1 plus So here the power of k here, or the exponent of k here is 1. So that 1 will come and multiply 1920. So 1 times 1920 will be what? 1920 to the power 1 minus 1. Okay, minus the 2 at the top of k here will now come and multiply 160. So when it's multiplied by 160, you now get 320 k to the power 2 minus 1. So in solving this, you now get 0 times k to the power 0 minus 1 is what? 0 plus 1 so plus 1 times 1920, you get 1920. K to the power 1 minus 1 is k to the power 0, which is the same as what? 1. So we maintain our 1920 minus 3200. 0 times k to the power 0 minus 1 will be 0, then plus 1920 k to the power 1 minus 1 will be k to the power 0. So k to the power 1 minus 1 is k to the power 0, which is the same as 1. So you now have 1920 minus 320 k to the power 2 minus 1, which is the same as what? K to the power 1. So you now have 320 k. So now your final function will be 1920 minus 320 k. So which is the function here. Yeah, so after getting that, you can after differentiating and getting this function, you equate this function to 0. So you now have 1920 minus 320 k is equal to 0. So we will add 320 k to both sides. So in doing that, you will now get 1920 minus 320. You now get 320k plus 320k is equal to 0 plus 320k. So this 320k will cancel out this 320 because you are having negative plus positive of the same amount. It will be 0. So you now have 1920 is equal to 320k. So we divide both sides by, we want k, so we divide both sides by 320, both sides by 320. So we divide this side by 320, we divide this side too by 320. So doing that, your k will now be 6. So that means what? At a point that you maximize profit, that means you have to increase your price by 6 times. So to get the rent, the rent charge, so that you can maximize profit, you have to now fix the number of increase, the number of times the rent can be increased, which is 6, into the price function. So we'll now fix it. We'll now fix the 6 here. So we now get 2100 plus 40 bracket open 6. So 2100 plus 40 times 6, you now get 2100 plus 240. So when you add 2100 plus 240, you now get 2340. So therefore your rent charge that will maximize the Bani Hostel profit should be 2340. So then that is the first requirement that we're asked to do. So the second one is to know the number of rooms that should be made available in order to maximize your profit. So in this case, we have to fix the number of times the price will increase, or the number of times the number of rooms will not be occupied, into the quantity function. And this is the quantity function, or which is the number of rooms that should be made available. So you now have 170 minus 40k. So wherever we see k, we'll put 6 there. you now have 170 minus, you now have 170 minus 4k. So wherever we see k, we'll put 6 there. So we now have 170 minus 4 into bracket 6. So 170 minus 24, which you now get 146. So that means the number of rooms that should be made available in order to maximize your profit should be 146 rooms. So in this case, if you want to know, you can go on and fix this into your revenue function to know the revenue that Bani Hostels should make in order to maximize their profit. Yeah, so that's how you have to go about it.